Welcome to EDIT 55 video on needs and learner analysis. So 2 parts this week. The first is focusing on needs, context, and learner analysis. And then the second is going to be an example I'm going to give you from an architecture studio I participated in. So hopefully that'll be interesting. So remember, this is our scaffolding for instructional design. We talked about curriculum design and ISTE standards last week. So this comes under the understand, where we're trying to understand the needs and the learners. We're also going to talk a little bit about problem framing, because that comes in if we're trying to identify what a problem is. We have to frame it in some way. So I'll give some examples of that. And also remember, we talked about 2 schools of thoughts in instructional design, where we have this rational approach, this very methodical, and then this action-centric, which is more about like creativity and finding new ideas and a lot more improvising the design process. And that's what allows us usually to frame and reframe more. So watch for that. Both of them, of course, use needs and learner analysis, but in slightly different ways. So, and one more review. Everyone designs SUDevice's courses of action aimed at changing existing situations into preferred ones. Needs and context analysis and learner analysis are very much about understanding the existing situation. Okay, needs and context. So, a needs assessment is identifying the needs or the gaps, and then the analysis is why does the gap exist? So when we're creating some type of instructional content for some reason, there's a need there. There's something that we want to be made more preferred. So we need to identify what that need is. And we also want to understand why. Why is that a need? Why is that a problem? Because that will help us when we are determining how to design our instructional content for it. We also need to think about how will we know when the need has been met? And that's part of identifying the need, like we did in learning outcomes when we wrote them. We want to know how we're going to know when it's been met. So here's steps of needs assessment, according to some people. First is this: identify the problem. Now, this can be tricky, especially if you're working on for an organization, because a lot of the time they've already kind of told you what they think the problem is. So for example, they might say that a problem or a need is, we need a professional development program. Okay. That's not a problem. That is actually a solution. You know, why do you need to say, why do we need a professional development program? That is what we mean by framing. They put a frame on something already. They said the solution to this is going to be a professional development program. But if we can get into more needs analysis and look more at what is right now, we might find that the best course of action is not to do a whole program. And so that's where the action-centric way of thinking comes into, is thinking like, okay, we're not going to assume that we're developing instruction. We might create different types of materials or different settings that might work better. But the original problem frame of a professional development program is a solution, not a need or problem. Okay. So from there, we're going to identify different data sources we can use to learn more. These can be anything. They're very similar to research or evaluation data sources, where we can have interviews, observations, document analysis survey, test results, research findings from other research studies, and we can look at examples of existing products. And then from there, pretty straightforward, we collect the data, we analyze it, and we make some type of recommendation for need. Learner analysis is similar. We're going to similarly be using a lot of different types of data or information to try to understand the learner better. I kind of like this quote, this design is invisible. Now let's read the whole thing. The goal of a designer is to listen, observe, understand, sympathize, empathize, synthesize, and glean insights that enable him or her to make the invisible visible. Think about what it means to make the invisible visible. when we are trying to understand a user, such as when you're interviewing a teacher. You want to be looking for things that the teacher themselves might not even realize about themselves. You're trying to get to a problem that other people might not know how to describe. You're trying to get deeper and find out the root causes of things. So that's why I like that make the invisible visible idea. So a full learner analysis is going to collect information on all kinds of stuff about different learners or users of a product. And what usually happens, and this comes from user interface design, research and work, but it's been adopted by learner experience design and a whole bunch of other fields, is they use this information from surveys, from interviews, and they create personas. Personas are fake people. Okay, so here's some examples from your book. It's from this website. They have a whole bunch of them where these aren't real people. These are fake people, but they look at the information from real people and what they've learned from real people, and they create a persona for them. And that helps them better understand, who am I designing this for? Who are our users? And they might create several different types of personas because they might have different types of users using the same thing. All right, so how does this apply to our work and our signature assignment? We've already done a survey and interviews. Let's look at this project overview here. First of all, I gave you some context about how difficult it can be for teachers to use technologies, and that COVID-19 was kind of a new situation. It changed things up a little bit, but a lot of the teachers are using technologies in less than ideal ways. This is what the challenge I gave you. Your challenge is to design an instructional program to help today's teachers effectively leverage new technologies for teaching and learning, period. Okay? So the gap or the problem I've identified is teachers having a hard time using instructional technologies. But your needs analysis might find more about the reasons behind that, and you might even find something different. Like maybe it's not that they don't know how to use it, maybe it's just access. So that's what our needs analysis is going to tell us. You're going to be using the information you find to frame what might help this situation, what could make it more preferred. Okay, so far, you've looked at a research article about teacher technology adoption. We've looked at a survey and an interview with a teacher. Use this information as we move forward to create a solution to this, to frame the problem and design an instructional approach that can address this problem. Okay, so the next video, I'm going to show an example of what this might look like.